Hello and welcome to Stories That Shape Us. My name is Joanna Daniel. I may have shared this here before many times that I love books. I'm reading this particular book, When the Past is Present, and I thought I wanted to come and talk about some of the ways the past shows up in the present. I think if you listen to Stories That Shape Us, you'll hear and you'll know by now some of the ways that the past shows up in the present. But I just wanted to come and share that. It's an amazing book. You should go and read that book. It's really, really good. If you've experienced anything in your past, that really explains a lot of stuff, right? So, how does the past show up in the present? It shows up in the present through unfinished conversations that gets projected onto other people, like the pattern of conversation and interaction, attitudes and behaviors that you demonstrate in one relationship, you'll do it in another. And I used to say, I say this to my clients, and I will say this sometimes in my programs, or in times of stress, we resort to what we know. This is kind of what that means, how the past shows up in the present. In times of stress, I parent like what I saw. And there are times when I say to my children, I will I become Jamaican. I say I talk patois, and they don't understand a word of what I'm saying. That's the past. That's an unfinished thing happening sometimes. Sometimes the unfinished thing is a memory. It's a way of relating that you've seen, that you've experienced, that you've learned, that stays and stores in in our emotional brain. And in times of stress, when something is happening, we go for that information. That information is presented to us in our frontal lobe, and we just do it as if we're back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And we're talking like we would talk then. We're feeling like we would feel then. And we're dealing with the person, the individual that is in front of us, as if they were the person that hurt us. So that's how the past becomes present in our patterns of interactions, in our patterns of relating, in how we hear, in how we feel, in how we respond to the person before us. Based on how we feel, we project those things onto them, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. So, for example, you might not grow up with your father, or you grew up with a father that was abusive and harmful to you. He might have been dismissive and emotionally unavailable. Now you have a problem with authority figures. Your present you may not have a problem with authority figures, but the child who got hurt have problems with authority figures, with our father. So an authority figure may be a boss, a lecturer at university, your GP, your therapist, whoever, somebody who has any kind of power or authority over your life, your pastor may say something, and you would respond in a way not based on what they say and who they are, but they may trigger something for you. And so you are talking to them, but you're not talking to them really, because you're finishing up. You're talking to the emotionally available father. You're talking to the abusive father. You're talking to the distant mother. You're talking to the narcissistic mother. The relationship. So now the conversation and the relationship becomes about, how do I not allow them to get the better of me? Here's an example. I was at a retreat many years ago. I was one of the presenters, and I never forget, at the table, one woman said, I have seen a lot of abuse in my family, and no man is going to control me. Unfinished business based on what she saw. All men are not controlling. Some men are, all men aren't. So, how she was being in relationships was based on feeling like she's going to be controlled, because that's what she sees. So the past is present. I'm living this story that tells me that men are controlling. So she can't now see the man that is in front of her. This man that is desiring a connection, that is desiring a relationship, what is seen is my mother's ex and my sister's ex, my cousin boyfriend who did this. And so I'm not going to let you do that. And so when we're in that place, we're not able to see the person and accept the person and do relationship with the individual that is right there with us, in front of us, learn and understand who they are. Now, I'm saying the past is always going to be present in some way. What we want is awareness of it. We want to be aware that, okay, so relationships break down in my family. All the women in my family are divorced, all of them. All the men have been like this. They've all cheated or they've all been abusive. So, what is it that I need to do different to become aware of the men that I allow in my life, and how do I interact with them? How do I be boundary? What are the things that I can do to build a connection and a relationship with an individual, independent or being fully aware that there's this past that I carry, these stories that I've experienced, these things that I've learned that have shaped my way of thinking about relationships. I'm afraid. I am not trusting anybody at the moment. I am open to learning how to trust, but I'm afraid of trusting because everybody, all the women in my family, those men were nice to begin with and they changed. So I'm fully aware of the potential for people to change. So I'm going to go into this relationship knowing that there's potential, but I'm also going to know that if something happens and I'm triggered, then that's my trigger to deal with. It doesn't mean that this person that I'm building a relationship with has done anything. I need to learn and understand my triggers, how my traumas, how my experiences have shaped how I think and how I see and how I define myself, how I define other people, and how I view relationships. How my experiences, my stories, the narrative that I have, how it's made me project those things onto other people. And so, as you're arguing, you're having a discussion, is there anything that I'm projecting? Or can I hear this person who is talking to me and not hear my mother's ex or my sister's ex? What can I do to be so fully present in the moment while I'm aware of the potential of my past to be disruptive in this relationship? So it does it not only in romantic relationships, it does it in parenting, it does it in friendships, it does it in just co-working relationships, that is acquaintances, it does it everywhere. But what we want to know is, how can I be fully aware of those stories while having healthy relationships with people here and now? How do I not project onto them my fears, my anxieties, my worries, my concerns? How do I not do that? How do I not make them? How do I not make him my father? How do I not make him my mother? How do I see the person for who they are and build a connection with that individual? That takes a lot of awareness. It takes a lot of awareness and the willingness to learn about ourselves daily, because we're always growing and learning daily. It takes awareness to grow daily. You know, people say, I become my mother, or have you ever said something to your children you thought, oh, my mother used to say that? You may not have planned to say it, but that unfinished conversation with your mother came out in your parenting. If you're listening and you see how this is recreated in your marriages, in your romantic relationships, in your parenting, offer yourself grace. The stories from a couple of days ago talk about the definition, how trauma defines us, but we're going to give ourselves grace as we become aware of it and the things that we need to do to learn, to change, and to grow on. So one of the ways that also the stories get convoluted is because we may unconsciously attract people with the same energy, the same attitude, with the same way of thinking, the way they view the world, their approach to certain things. We may unconsciously attract that because we want to carry on recreating those feelings because they're familiar. So if you're listening and you marry your father, you know, somebody who was similar, but you really didn't like some of those traits, it's because it was familiar, it was comfortable, it was what you know. And so those things were we're carrying on, because we connect with the same attitude, with the same temperament, the same characteristics. And in the same token, we project, right? So there's this thing, we do it, all of us do it, right? So if you're doing it, don't feel bad, because we all do. What we want here on Stories That Shape Us is awareness of it. So when we have awareness of it, that's the first place that we begun to change, because now we can think, we can be reflective in the moment as it's happening, going, I feel this way, but that's not what they said. Let me check in with what they say and what they mean. So I am not making assumptions based on my past or what I'm thinking, so that I can just have a conversation with the person that I'm having a conversation with, so I can manage this conflict in a safe way with the person that I'm having the difficulties with, and not with any of my past stories shaping how I relate and interact in this moment. We want to be as present as possible, fully consciously aware, with our frontal lobes on, so that we can engage and participate in life in the here and now. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of Stories That Shape Us. If you've gotten value from these stories, take a look at our Patreon link below this video or in the show notes of this podcast, and come and join us, where we are looking at the stories that we're unpacking, the stories that shape us. And, you know, there's so much depth that we will go, so much things that we want to teach you. We want to take you on a journey of growth and healing, to give you the tools to navigate all the areas of your life successfully. Thank you so much again for joining me in this episode of Stories That Shape Us. I hope you'll join me on the next story.